Creativity. Many of you will not say probably, oh no, I'm a business person. I'm not really creative, or am I? Because sometimes you have to find creative solutions. The question is, how do you deal with creativity and how do you actually become a creative leader? We have one of the worldwide most known experts here. Hello and welcome, Vincent Wanga.
Hello. Uh,
Thank
it's
you.
really, it's really an honor to be on the show. I really look forward to the conversation, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for taking the time, and we go straight into it. When people now talk about creativity, and let's face it, it's an industry where the competition is insane. Many people try to get into this industry. What, in your opinion, are actually the essential skills that probably art directors or designers need to actually go just beyond the talent and become creative leaders?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think first and foremost, there is a shift between the time when you are getting, acclimated to being a senior designer or an individual contributor. And then I think
Mhm.
this applies to any industry to actually becoming a leader. And I think that mindset shift has to do with this transfer from hard skills, the actual software and programs and skills you've acquired throughout your career into this mindset of soft skills that really help prepare you for management of human beings, which is a totally different endeavor. I mean,
Mhm.
these are anything from, the intuition of managing people to empathy to being a visionary, because you are now the chief visionary of a team of people, and you have to set that vision for them to execute. Understanding how to manage different nuanced personalities, and it really creates a barrier for a lot of people to enter management because they think those hard skills that they really excelled at will transfer one to one to leadership. And it's a totally different mindset that you have to prepare for. So I think that's the first thing I really want people to understand. I think
Mhm.
the other thing is you have to be a really compelling storyteller. Not just to your team to help translate, the objectives to them to execute, but also you're now dealing with clients directly, clients or
Mhm.
stakeholders if you're working for a corporation. And if you can't sell the vision to them, not only selling the vision, but also including the hard metrics and objectives that they need to actually produce results, you will fail at that job. And I think too many people, unfortunately, are not prepared for that transition because there's no formal training or school for that. It's something
Mhm.
you have to learn on the job. Maybe you have somebody who prepares you or is a mentor for you, but it's really created a barrier for a lot of people to transition to the mindset that it requires to be a manager or a leader in any industry, let alone a creative one. And that's part of the reason I wrote the book to help people really get on that level and shift their mindset to be ready for leadership.
Do you think anyone can learn it, or do you think that some people are just not suitable for a management or leadership role?
I think some people are not suitable for a management and leadership role. I'll also say something controversial. A lot of the people in management and leadership are not suitable for management and leadership.
I would fully
Uh,
agree, by the way, and science is behind you with that. So, yeah.
Exactly. And people think it's a meritocracy where I'm the best salesperson, so I deserve to
Hmm.
lead all the sales. And that's not necessarily true. I fundamentally believe, in my experience as well, is that leadership is a calling. First and foremost, you really have to have a selfless mindset because you serve the team and not the other way around. And I think the most effective leaders, and, if you read books like Good to Great by Jim Collins, they
Hmm.
actually quantified that for us. The best leaders really have an empathetic approach to leadership and find ways to serve and defend their teams and advocate for their teams going forward. So my point here is that it should be a calling. There should be certain skills and traits that could qualify you as a leader early in your career that you can notice, and hopefully your leadership will notice that would make you better suited to be a leader. But I also think, really importantly, if you don't have those traits and if leadership is not for you, that's okay as well. Being an individual contributor is still very vital to any organization, and you should
Absolutely.
know whether you have the traits to be a leader or not, whether you have the calling to be a leader or not, whether you want to, before you make that decision. Because again, there are multiple paths to success. And leadership is just one, and you should never be pressured to enter leadership just because you think that's the only way you can extend your career.
Mm. Brilliant point here. And you mentioned mentorship. Do you think it's important to have a mentor? And of course, the next question with that is, if you think it's important, how do I find the right mentor for me?
Absolutely. It's not just important, it's essential. And the reason I mentioned that was my first point, where a lot of the skills, these soft skills that you need to be an effective leader are gate kept. They're not things in the job description. They're not things that,
Mm.
you just go and get your PhD in. So oftentimes the most effective leaders, and certainly in my case, there was strong mentors either early in your career when you're ready to make that transition who really exemplified those things for you and then started teaching you, here's how those things kind of operate at this level. I think in absence of that, you can be proactive about mentorship. You can approach a leader in your organization that you admire or you think is being effective and just say like, hey, can I shadow you and figure out how you do your job? Or what are ways that I can be more helpful to you? I think another aspect I really tell people is that you can also be proactive in helping them solve problems. Everybody brings problems to the leader. Your literal job is to solve the hardest problems. By the time it gets to your desk, that means somebody else hasn't figured it out. But what if you
Mhm.
came to and approached your leadership with solutions as well? Not just problems, but here's some ideas I have developed that could help solve this problem. And that is a much more proactive way to, one, encourage mentorship, but also show those leadership traits and techniques like proactivity that will help you become a more proactive leader in the future. And in absence of mentorship, really do your research. We have the internet at our fingertips on our phone. More information that probably ever existed in human history is in our pocket. So there are books out there, there are resources, there are people you can learn from, people you can reach out to on LinkedIn. Be persistent, be in their inbox, and really take a proactive step in how you can encourage mentorship and find mentors who identify traits that you might want to emulate in your own leadership journey.
Nice one. And you wrote a book about this. Could you tell us more about your book, please?
I did. And I want to say, first and foremost, I wrote this book in a completely selfless pursuit. I took a very scenic route to leadership. I
Hmm.
talk about it in my book, and I just decided I wanted to write the book that I wish existed when I started my career. If I had the cheat codes to just skip to the front of the line, like what would that look like? And as I started writing this book and it started, kind of about my background, my history, and what I've achieved, I realized like it really needs to be about how I got here so that I can help people who might be in this period of their life where they're deciding, hey, do I want to go into leadership? Or maybe I'm already a leader and I want to be more effective in that pursuit, regardless of your industry. What are the essential things that are kind of hard earned and hard learned that can help me, accelerate and elevate my leadership credentials? And that's the book that I essentially wrote. It's called The Art of Direction. Personal perspectives on the path to leadership. And it's
Hmm.
really about the unspoken nuanced traits that you really need to be an effective leader. And it's geared towards creatives because that's my industry. But I really truly believe a lot of these traits are universal and can apply to any industry and any leader who's really looking to level up, or a person who might be deciding, hey, do I want to enter leadership and management or not? And I emphasize in the book, it's okay if you don't. There's a path for you. There's entrepreneurship. There's individual contributors. There's specialist roles for you that are vital and essential. And the first and most important question is not if you want to become a leader, but why.
Excellent. So when you now talk about becoming a leader, of course, many people probably have quite similar question, but many people will say, well, suddenly I'm a leader. So how do I actually foster some sort of strong team culture that I now have to create? And of course, what people also are interested in is how do I prevent from making the most typical mistakes and what are these? Could you tell us something about how to foster this team culture and how to or which mistake to avoid?
Yeah, I think starting with team culture, the first thing is that I mentioned you're the chief visionary, right? Well, you're also there to inspire them. So the first and foremost, you should have the credentials where they respect what you do.
Hmm.
That whether that's a design background or you've helped close critical deals on the sales team or in marketing, you have strategy that's innovative. If they don't respect you on the actual hard skills level, it'll be hard for you to maintain that culture. So those credentials need to be bona fide. I think the second thing is really being empathetic. And what I mean by that specifically is you have to listen to your team. But you also have to understand that in a leadership position, there's this duality. You represent your team and you're a shield for them, but you also represent, the executives and the company and the objectives. And you're right in the middle as kind of a translator between these two different teams. But they need to see that you're advocating for them and protecting, the vision of the objective that you're trying to reach. But the leadership and the executives also need to know that you're translating the hardcore metrics and objectives that we need to manage the bottom line. And that's getting it to the team so that the work that you're actually producing produces results. And I think really listening to your team, advocating for them, but finding unique ways to inspire them. I always love to take my team, in particular a design team, out of the design realm. I might bring in a guest speaker who is an architect or, a master craftsman or something that's tangentially related to the task that you guys have to do, but in a totally different industry who can teach us some of their techniques that can get us out of our day-to-day grind and then bring us back with inspiration in the way that they do their craft that we can apply to what we need to do. So find ways outside of your industry to get other voices to also help inspire your team, because no matter how great your team culture is, sometimes they can tune you out. They have to listen to you every single day, all the time. Find other advocates to really purvey that message to your team so that everyone can continue to be inspired and do the work that they need to do. But it starts with their trust and advocacy that you employ, both with the leadership, but also with their needs and being attuned to those things.
Brilliant. When now someone's listening, maybe we have some people listening here and say, hey, I am a junior creative.
Yeah.
And they now listen to you and they think, well, especially when we're in the US, I'm competing in an industry which is incredibly competitive. And some people come along with their Harvard, Princeton, Yale degree, which I
Yep.
probably do not have. How do I stand out in such an insanely competitive industry when I'm now listening to this and I'm actually a junior creative just at the start of my career?
I love that question because I'm one of those people. I think I'm extremely talented in what I do, and obviously the results and things I've done in my career prove that. But I not only didn't go to Harvard or Princeton or Pratt or any of these major institutions, I
Mm,
didn't graduate from college. And the reason I mention that with pride is that you cannot let your circumstance be an excuse for not executing at the highest level.
amazing.
You can speak to anybody, regardless of if they're a Rhodes Scholar or they grew up in poor socioeconomic standpoints. Everybody has some sort of limitation on why they can achieve something. If you look at some of the most successful people in the world, they are riddled with flaws and failure. But they didn't use that as an excuse. And instead, I tried to shift that mindset into using it as an advantage. I've overcome so much hardship in my life and I've used it as rocket fuel to achieve the things that I do. I talk about it in my book. So I don't appreciate when anybody makes an excuse because of your gender or your race or your socioeconomic background, or because you're an immigrant, you can't do something. I
I
literally
think
am
you have an
living.
immigrant background by yourself, don't you?
Exactly. And yet I'm on this show talking to you about my
Yeah.
success. So I think the first thing is to get any sort of mindset that you can achieve something out of your system, because that is a self-limiting philosophy. I think the second thing is being proactive and understanding what you want to achieve in your life. And that starts with setting that vision. What do you want to do? Do you want to be an agency owner? Do you want to be VP of sales? Do you want to be, head marketing for a tech company? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Set that vision and hold that steadfast so that you have a North Star that you really try to pursue. The second thing is be proactive. If you're trying to break into an ultra competitive industry like tech, which I recently came from,
Mm.
we want to see your proactivity. I have a friend who would post, critical commentary of a particular large cap tech company every single day about how they could improve their product. It started with 4 or 5 people seeing it, and it started cascading to the point where eventually he got an interview and they're like, okay, you keep badgering us that you can improve it, prove it. And they were able to. So find ways that you can be proactive and really approach your career in a way that you're solving problems, even if you don't have that opportunity yet. Query these companies, show your work, take your passion projects and approach them as if they're real and put them in your portfolio. The worst thing you can do is try to show up at an interview and not have any real world things to show when
Yeah.
there's so many other hobbies and passions that you have that you can approach in a real world context. Use that to show them how you think, which is more important sometimes early in your career than what you do, and use that to backdoor your way into a career. I talk in my book about how I did so there's no excuse. Don't use excuses. Be proactive and really understand what you want to break into, what you want your future to be. Use that as your North Star and just be relentless. That is the most important thing. And once your foot is in the door, don't let your foot off the gas. And that's halfway to success right there.
Brilliant. And when I look at your history here, and especially with the success you have right now, and you're still thriving in this industry, let's face it, AI has reshaped the creative industry. And also, I saw in your history that you have been part of a 1 billion tech unicorns growth. So, from these 2 points of view, could you elaborate on how do you think is AI going to impact the creative industry? And of course, what are the learnings from this $1 billion growth you also were part of?
Yeah, first of all, AI is gonna, reshape every industry. So,
Correct.
particularly creatives is an interesting dichotomy because it's one of the few industries we thought were immune to this because of the uniqueness of human generated ingenuity and
Mm,
creativity. We thought it might take decades for AI to catch up. It took months. And I
yeah.
think the first warning here is that AI grows in its capabilities exponentially. And that's different than any technology that's come before. So a year ago, it couldn't do video. Now it can do cinematic Hollywood level video with just
Yeah.
text prompts. So everyone should be cognizant of that, that no industry is safe from how it can reshape it. But I think, as I mentioned in my previous comment, your mindset plays a huge role here. You can look at it as AI as a threat to take your job, or you can be one of those people who leverages AI to actually help enhance your job and your viability and value within an industry. One of my favorite quotes is that, AI isn't going to take your job, but somebody using AI will. So be one of
Hmm.
those persons who embraces AI, understands it, and
Brilliant
uses it
quote.
to really help elevate your role. I think AI is going to affect people at the lower levels, in the mid level, but those who skill upward will really find ways that they can use AI to enhance their efficiency and do the thing that if you're an entrepreneur is the most valuable. How do you multiply yourself? AI can help you in that capacity. So shift your mindset and use this as a tool instead of as an adversary. And I think you'll be much better positioned. I think the other thing is that we all have problems in our life, right? So if you were to
Hmm.
write down all of the problems that you have in your working workflow every single day, and then go find AI solutions to solve those things, you now get to spend what limited time you have on the things you actually get to enjoy and are good at, while AI takes care of everything else. So really think of ways that you can leverage AI to help you work more efficiently, to help be a multiplier, and never use it as a crutch to do your job. Because once you open that Pandora's box, it will find a way. And if not, your leadership, who's thinking about the bottom line, will find ways to leverage it to replace you instead of you leveraging it to level yourself up to a place where you plus AI is greater than what you or AI could do separately. So that's really important. I think from the tech kind of unicorn perspective, being part of this $1 billion valuation was such a rewarding experience in my life because when I joined the company, we were less than 100 people.
Hmm.
And to see that growth in a 4-year period means you went through about 100 different levels of evolution of a
Yeah.
company. So the reason I mentioned
At
that
record speed.
at record speed, I mean, at the time, we were one of the fastest growing companies in all of North America. And the reason I mentioned why this is important is adaptability is survivability. So make sure that not only are you skilling upward, but you're skilling outward and that you have multiple skills that can allow you to shift as a company shifts, or more importantly, in the broader context, an industry shifts. Because 5 years ago, we weren't talking about AI. It's here. 10 years ago, we weren't talking about, the metaverse. It's here. We weren't talking about quantum computing or, a lot of the emerging technology that's happening, and we don't know what's on the horizon. So if you have broader skills in marketing, in design, in sales, in leadership, etc., you find yourself in a much better position to not only survive industry shifts we can't predict, but if you find yourself in a position like me, where you're in a rapid growth company, where you have to evolve your role 5 times every couple years, that adaptability and those variants of skills that you offer make you extremely valuable and allows you to ascend and be a part of that transformational story, as I was privileged to have.
Perfect. I think these are almost the perfect final words. One more question, of course, I have. When now people say, hey, I just want to learn more about you or your book, The Art of Direction, how can people find out more about you, your book? And of course, when they want to use you as a consultant or as a keynote speaker, how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely, I appreciate that. As I mentioned, I wrote a book about my career and about ways that you can be a more effective leader called The Art of Direction: Personal Perspectives on the Path to Creative Leadership. It is available on my website, vincentwanga.com. It's also available on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Books A Million, all the major book retailers, and for order at your bookstore worldwide. So
Mhm.
definitely pick up a copy if you're interested in those topics. I'll emphasize, although this book was written from a creative's perspective and for creative leadership, I think these principles, again, apply to any industry and anybody who's on a potential leadership journey. In addition to that, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. As I mentioned about mentorship, be persistent and proactive. If I don't respond right away, send me another message. People in our position are very busy, as I'm sure you understand, and we want to see how much you really want something. We can never want it more than you. So be persistent, be proactive, reach out to me. Those are the primary ways you can get a hold of me. And again, on vincentwanga.com, there's a lot of the thought leadership that I share, ways that you can connect with me if you'd like to book me for a speech, or connect with me for any of the brand consulting that I do across the world.
Perfect. These are the brilliant and most perfect final words for this podcast. Creativity and the leadership journey. We now heard how you can actually do it. I can tell you from what I saw, I do a lot of interviews on this podcast, and hardly has anyone impressed me more than what I not only heard today, but what I wrote about, read about you, and what I saw, what you actually did. So I can only highly recommend read this book and also get in touch with him. It is probably the best decision you can make in a long time. So at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Vincent, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niles. I really appreciate it.